Friends, Doc South here. This one's for Operation Chill Out. The folks that go and rescue homeless veterans and do what they can to help them. They're having their Vets Summerfest tomorrow on the 11th. Yeah, the 11th of August. I thought you'd like this story. It's an old blurb I wrote. Oh, it's at least 2 years old now, maybe a little older. And it was some of the circumstances in here have changed, etc. But I think you'll like it. Okay, it's kind of touching. Well, here we go. All right. Let me just. Oh, I'm sorry, friends. Real quick. Okay, there. Okay, we're all set. Young Soldier, Old Soldier's the name of this one. My nephew Blake lives down in the southwestern mountains of Virginia, about a mile or two from the peaks of Otter. He's lucky. That area is perhaps one of the most beautiful places on earth. Blake moved down that way shortly after his time in the Marines. He served in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I don't think it was all fun and games. In fact, it was anything but. That's another story for some time later on. I just got off the phone with Blake. He wanted to tell me of a fellow he met. This past weekend marked the 71st anniversary of D-Day. If I understood it right, and forgive me if I'm wrong, there was an Army unit of soldiers from Bedford, Virginia, who were on some of the first landing boats to hit Omaha Beach. They were known as the Bedford Boys, I think. Many of them died or were wounded that day. Many died or were wounded later on in the fight to rid the world of Hitler. Of course, after the war, many of them left us due to natural causes. Time has a way of marching on. Still, after all these years, there's more than enough of these men left alive to hold an event to thank them for their brave efforts on that day long ago. Blake said that it was the usual ceremony, and it was very nice. The men from that unit were thanked and saluted as well they should have been. I can't imagine that their money would have been any good in any cafe or bar in town. That just goes without saying. I believe a D-Day monument was erected in the area long ago. I'm pretty sure that it might be a national monument. Well, it should be. There was a meet and greet after the event. Blake went to it. Some of the original unit were shaking hands with folks. They were thankful for the honors and gratitude bestowed upon them during the ceremony. They answered questions as best they could and told what stories they knew or whatever they remembered. As Blake was talking with them, he noticed another soldier who sat a little bit away from the crowd. The fellow sitting off to one side wasn't really all by himself. He was shaking hands and talking a little, but still he was off a little by himself. The crowd around him eventually moved on, so Blake went over to him to say hello. The old veteran smiled a little as Blake introduced himself and said how he had been in the Middle East. I'm sure they shook hands. Blake was being way too modest when he said he had seen more than his share of war during his time in the Marines, but that it had to be nothing compared to what this old-timer went through so many years ago. Blake said thank you to the man. He also asked if the old man had anything to say about that day. The old veteran showed Blake a wound on his head. On D-Day, a bullet went right through his eye and came out his left temple. Blake could see that the man's left eye was made of glass and wasn't moving. The last thing that eye saw was the D-Day beachhead. The old soldier just looked forward off into the distance. He said that he had only one word to describe the battle for Normandy. He delivered that word with a loud whisper. Blake had to lean closer to hear the word, hell. Then the man sat back and just stared some more. Blake sat with him a bit until someone else came over to shake hands. There you are.